Hello, welcome once again. We're about to go over Global Business, authors Peng, Chapter 4, Resources and Capabilities. As always, this is not a substitute for you reading the textbook. This is not a shortcut. This is a supplement, a complement to what you are doing. Any additional work available from the publishers or your instructor should be taken first. I understand it might be a little easier just to sit back and watch, but you probably want to go through and also gather up your own interpretation of the material. With that being said, we'll get underway. As some have noticed from our prior videos, we do occasionally mention out the slides that we are on and the page, so those who are following along at home, you can keep up. We're going to define resources and capabilities. They are intertwined but not exactly the same thing. Value chain from an analysis, managers will learn from that, explaining the VRIO, frame. Nice acronym. Participating in the leading debates and implementations or implications for our actions that you should follow. Again, you're trying to take something out of every lecture. First of all, starting on page 97 in your textbook, understanding resources and capabilities. First off, what do we even mean by those things? Well, resources and capabilities are close to being the same, but not quite. But before we get to that, we're going to go back a little bit. You may have been aware of a couple of things before then. You may have seen this in another business class. SWOT analysis. What that stands for is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are internal, what you do well and what you don't do well. You or the company that you are at or the company you started. Opportunities and threats are external. Opportunities are advantages or things that you possibly could take advantage of. Threats are competitions externally. Enabled and constrained by formal and informal rules of the game. Always keep that in mind. A little bit of that rule of the game thing going on. Slide 5. Resources. Anything that you have available to make the product or good. That also includes different strategies. They could be tangible or intangible assets. Capabilities are tangible or intangible as also. Now we're talking about the strategy involved and which one you choose from those. They look quite a bit alike, but they're not. Resources are things that you have. How you actually manage or husband those resources is the capabilities. You can give anyone a bat. Whether or not they can hit the ball is another matter. A tangible resource is something that you can actually feel, touch. Intangibles are harder to quantify. Going back to the baseball analogy, just because you have a bat does not mean you can hit a baseball. If you can hit a baseball, considering you have less than a second and a half at the professional level to hit the ball traveling 90 miles an hour over 90 feet, that's a pretty good talent. Talent, you may be able to acquire some of it is born. A person who has a talent that they're born with and knows how to utilize it to the maximum of their capabilities, that's impressive. Examples of such on the bottom of page 97. You sensing or having the ability to figure out what's going on to actually execute it. Your reconfiguration, the ability to maintain flexibility in your business design. Understanding. You're going back. You see something, you have a plan, you execute the plan. If it doesn't come out the way you want, you go back and redo it. If it comes out the way you want, you still go back. You look and find out what works and what doesn't work. Because sooner or later you are going to run back into that threat, and you will need to be able to adjust. And you'll notice everything as far as tangible is something you can probably see. Intangible, that is the human resources. What we like to say, your entrepreneurial spirit. Can't see it, but you know by the effort. This is the person who sees the advantage. This is the person who puts in a little bit of that midnight oil to actually get ahead. We're going to talk about that towards the end of the chapter. Human resource example of tangible or intangible. Something to think about. Human resources are listed as intangible. They're defined as something that you cannot physically see. That does not apply to humans, but the definition of intangible asset is kind of hard and difficult. Again, quantifying that is incredibly difficult. You don't know what the person is capable of, but if you're judging them simply by the way they look, you may be in for a very, very rude awakening. So my suggestion is that you be careful with that idea. Value chain. Any firm or institution has a value chain. You put things together and you should be able to make it better or worth more than when pieces are individually held. Sometimes the sum is greater than the individual parts. You put things together, they tend to work out as a much more efficient system. And this is what we're referring to as the value chain. You're trying to figure out what you do well, what you do not do well, and what you should actually take out and outsource. You're looking at this graph, you're looking at the two competing. You may not be good at something, or something is such a commodity, meaning you can get it anywhere. You're better off farming that work out. Sometimes some of the logistics might be better off done somewhere else, so you can focus on other things. If you're trying to figure out what you need to do and what you need to farm out, you have to figure out whether or not it should be in-house or outsourced. If it's something repetitive, something that does not add a great deal of value, it doesn't matter who does it, you outsource it. If it's something that adds value and makes you better than your rivals, you insource it. You can go buy furniture anywhere. If you want custom furniture, something that's built to last and not put together with glue and a prayer and some plywood, well, you probably want to bring that value to your consumers by doing that by hand. If it does, you probably want to keep it where you can keep the quality up. And this is where you see this decision tree deciding which way you're going to go with that. In-house versus outsourcing. Again, we're on page 99, slide 11. If you think that it is so basic, so indistinguishable from one or the other, you can outsource it. High commoditization, meaning, hey, anybody could do it. You probably want to outsource it if at all possible. Proprietary, referring to something very, very unique, your particular skill sets. Again, that's why you go to college, to develop some unique skill sets, hopefully. You probably want to do it in-house. Now, if everyone in your particular industry, you may be unique among other things, but you may not be unique to your industry. Then you have a decision. Think about certain things that are common but unique to a very few people. We'll take something high and complicated as an example. Being a doctor in the medical field. A lot of work, a lot of effort, and it is not an easy thing to do. But there are still a lot of doctors. If we're going to compare that to the illustration as far as high-end furniture or you being able to hit a baseball, they generally don't pay doctors as much as they do baseball players. Not saying it's fair, not saying it's right, I'm just saying. Another thing to take in consideration, where are you doing these things? Location, location, location. They say that's the key to real estate. The textbook brings up an example of Boeing. They tend to farm out a lot of the work all over the place, outsourcing seats, doors, many parts dealing with an airplane, bringing it together and putting it together in their plants. They're not making all the rubber for the tires, they're outsourcing that. But once the tires come in, they're responsible for putting it on the plane. So you're better off figuring out the landing gear than wasting time trying to figure out how to make rubber. You have to decide at a certain quality level, should you offshore it, onshore it, meaning it's domestic, or captive sourcing, you're putting the business somewhere else under your name, just in a foreign country, possibly for resources or for cheaper labor. Make sure you know the difference between outsourcing and offshoring. Outsourcing it simply means it's not done within your business. Offshores means that you take it outside of your home country. Close, and it can be interchanged, but they're not. They're a little bit different. All right. Moving from SWOT analysis to VRIO. What do we mean by that? Well, in the framework is a step up above the normal SWOT analysis. It's broken into a couple of things. Is what you're doing valuable? Is someone willing to pay you for it? Is it rare? Very few people might be able to do it. Is it imitatable? Can someone imitate it? And the organization that you have, strength in numbers, and a well-oiled machine, as it were. Do you work in harmony? Does everyone sing from the same sheet music? Nothing better than a choir, especially when everyone knows their roles, or an orchestra. You ever been to a good concert? Everyone plays their part well and above. If you can hit all of those notes, you will be successful. You have no alternative but to be successful. You're adding value. No one else can do it. It's difficult for others to imitate it, and you as an organization outshine your peers. It's a beautiful thing when it happens. If none of those things are available, you're better off not even doing it. We'll try another example. Anyone can make coffee. Some reason Starbucks has a magic sauce that makes them uncompetable. Other people can do coffee, but for whatever reason, people come to Starbucks day and night in droves. Now, they are still number 2 behind McDonald's. But in the morning, you're really not going to Starbucks for all that other stuff. You're pretty much going there for the coffee. and whatever beverages they have. McDonald's, at least you can try and get a, Egg McMuffin and some pancakes out of the deal. Let's get in a little bit more depth on each. Slide 15, page 102. Value added. Are you doing something that a consumer is willing to pay for? Your textbook brings up a very interesting case. IBM used to be the leader in hardware in computers, but the cost of computers has come down. More and more firms can actually imitate them, so you're not adding much value. From there, they decided to switch over to software, large computing software. Difficult to do, hard to imitate. You can't go get these things off of shelf in a store, especially if you need some unique software to your business. So if you're not doing something unique and anyone else can do it, so you're not adding a lot of value, you just can't get a box off the shelf and imitate it, you're not going to do very well. Rare. What competitive advantage do you have that your competitors don't have? Looking for another word and come up with one. Your textbook makes something a little interesting that I'm not sure I'd completely go with, but we're going to run with this. What is the distinction between Boeing and Airbus? That is a European plane manufacturing compared to Boeing, which is a United States airplane manufacturing. Your textbook says they both make this product, but it reads, and I quote on page 103, but they are not rare. I'm not sure I completely concur with that opinion, considering there are two major airplane manufacturers. There are a couple of small rivals as well, but the two biggest players who control quite a bit of the market are Boeing and Airbus. You'll be hard-pressed to find another plane you're on the next time you're out. It's probably a Boeing or an Airbus. Can it be imitated? Is there some way it can be duplicated? If it can be, then you do not have what is known as a moat, some type of defense where others cannot do it. If someone else can do it, then you have a problem. In your textbook, it talks about high-end chip makers. There are very, very few who can do some of these things and produce them at a high quantity as well. With that, you have something that's unique. This phrase here, casually or casual ambiguity, if you possess that, you are unique. It looks like it's something anyone can do, but for some reason it comes natural and you can do it without even thinking. We'll go back to the music. There are some people who have a voice that is capable of touching your soul. And you think about some of the people that you enjoy listening to. There are people who have an average voice and just sing well. And there are people who can hit notes that are unobtainable to the mere mortals. They have certain gifts, certain insights, personal traits. They can go in a room and, without even trying, tend to put the spotlight on themselves. Do you or your business have that capability? Hard to imitate. And that casual ambiguity, which looks like anyone can do it, which is causing everyone to follow suit and realize I am way in over my head. Something to think about. Do you have a firm team? Does your organization actually create some value over and above you could on your own? Complementary assets. You're not duplicating the things that you have an advantage of. You are able to actually have complementary strengths and weaknesses with the people in your firm or organization. The complexity of actually getting the organization on one page is always the issue. A lot of times it can't be done. The rare times that it does, you see it, the firm tends to work. People inside there create the organization. It is nothing more and nothing less than who's there. And can they motivate, inspire, and lead the team? Strategic sweet spot, how much of that do you overlap? How much do you actually meet your consumers' demands and to maximize your firm's capabilities? We're on slide 20. I'll let you get into that one on your own. When you analyze the value chain of the VRIO framework, what's the most important question to begin with and why? Most important question is the resources and capabilities. Do they add a value? Can you make the consumer understand that they are getting something over and above what they're paying for? They're paying $10, but they feel like they got 15. Let's get into some debates about these things. What does it take to win on an international stage? Very good question. You have to understand quite a bit where you are at and where the other businesses are at. Something called reverse innovation. It becomes extremely popular, but then comes to your particular neck of the woods. Your textbook uses IKEA as an example all over the place, then it comes back to you. And now it's like, oh, okay, there we go. This is entertaining. Didn't know about this. Slide 24. Offshoring or not. Just to go over the terms, the BPO, you decide to offshore to a third party, original manufacturing, equipment manufacturer, OEMs, original design manufacturing, original brand manufacturing, and reshoring refers simply just to bring it back to the original country that it started in. Along the way, you have to worry about the political, environmental, and other issues when you're doing all those things. A little more self-explanatory as far as the terms go, so we're not going to cover that in a lot of detail. The original manufacturing, original design. Looking once again, when do you have it in-house and when do you take it out? Most R&D tends to be in-house. Rarely do people offshore that, simply because you come up with some new ideas and technology. Getting it from a third party tends to be a bit of a problem, especially when you pay someone to come up with it for you. 26. Economies of scale versus 3D. Now have the ability to actually make individual parts. Take a little time with the 3D machine compared to you just cranking out widgets over and over again. And it depends on what you are doing. If you have an older house and you need to repair it, they may not have the pieces. This is when 3D comes into bearing. And if you wish to specialize, maybe you have that as your only thing. You take care of older homes, or you have a bit of a combination to do both. It's something to think about how you want to structure the business. Globally, there may be something unique somewhere else. Mass manufacturing may not do it. If you're doing it one piece at a time or only a few, you're probably going to charge a little bit more for special tailoring, kind of like having a tailored suit. Should you offshore it or reshore it? It depends on what it is. Again, if it's something unique, maybe you can actually get it done with great quality and efficiency somewhere else, simply due to lower cost. Management savvy. All right. Now this lovely chart is on the bottom of page 114. Essentially, it covers 4 different areas on that page. The first being taking advantage of VRIO and the SWOT analysis, understanding what you do well, what you don't, what you need to improve on, and what's out there and available and who's your competition. The way you're going to answer that is the VRIO. Your textbook says, especially the parts of strengths and weaknesses. What do you do unique that would differentiate you from your competitors? Second, you want to understand the competition. You don't necessarily want to imitate the competition. Benchmarking, as it's known. You find the best of the business and then you try to imitate them. You have enough resources to imitate them. Maybe you just need to be a little better or be more creative and find a sweet spot for yourself. In a lot of manufacturing, they try to find the best of breed and imitate. Maybe you should just come up with something a little better, period. You need to build up your resources. Last thing you need is that supply chain going to pot and you don't have any way of keeping things going. You also need to figure out where the market might be headed. Last but not least, page 215. Working into this, trying to understand what is the implement for you personally and how is this relevant to anything you are doing. Your textbook breaks that last part up into 2 sections. 1, you need to get involved. You want to make yourself indispensable to either the company or your clients. Something that other people cannot do. Second, you must understand if you're not going to do it, someone else is. I heard this a long time ago and it still holds true. Someone is out to eat your lunch. Always. Remember, part of your responsibility is you need to go find someone else's lunch you need to eat. Not going to be any different than that. The old expression, dog eat dog world. Yep. So, you either be prepared for someone trying to eat your lunch. The best way you can do that is be prepared to try and eat someone else's lunch. Not that you have to be mean or cruel, but you better be prepared because it's going to be a struggle. All right. Hopefully that was helpful. Answered some questions, got you thinking about some things, I hope. Next is just a quick summary. The terms are in the last few pages of the chapter. All right. If you found this helpful, you found it entertaining, useful, share, like, all that other good stuff so others may know what's out there. All right then, you go make it a good one, and we'll talk to you soon.